Where they requested assistance for evacuating and flooded almost from their house. With family, there was
Director, International and National Disaster Risk Reduction Partners, members of the media. I do acknowledge the presence of senior government officials, the two Assistant Ministers, Honorable Singh Rara and Honorable Nath, and the Permanent Secretaries for Rural and Maritime Development and Disaster Management, Mr. Kulitangane, and the Permanent Secretary for Defence, National Security and Policing, Mr. Manas Lesuma, Divisional Commissioner Central, and senior government officials. Ladies and gentlemen, Nisambul Vinaka, and a very good morning to you all. Firstly, let me congratulate the Director NDAW, Ms. Vasiti Soko, for the inaugural Excellence Award on Women's International Network and Disaster Risk Reduction. That was awarded to her last week. Vasiti, congratulations, well deserved, and we join you in your achievements, and thank you indeed for registering Fiji again within the region and globally. So thank you once again for these achievements. Ladies and gentlemen, again let me remind you of my earlier statement last week on the 13th of October during the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. I had highlighted key statistics from the recent Asia Pacific Disaster Report of 2021 published by the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, UNESCO. The report stated that between 1970 and 2020, natural hazards in Asia and the Pacific affected 6.9 billion people and killed more than 2 million. That is equivalent to 41,373 lives lost per year. Despite these statistics, the report noted that there have been substantial progress from 2011 to 2020, as the average loss of life per year fell to 10,936. And in 2019 and 20 respectively, the average annual loss fell to around 6,200 lives. This drop in numbers is attributed to early warning system that minimized the impacts. Notable in the report is Fiji's climate change risk, that is an increase in precipitation and flooding. This risk is something we witness yearly during cyclone seasons, where people are dying more of drowning as a result of flooding. Almost 30% of Fiji's population are at risk from multiple hazards occurring simultaneously. Historical analysis noted that Fiji since 2000 have recorded over 60 people dying as a result of natural disasters, with an average of 3 cyclones now experienced yearly during a cyclone season. There is no secret that this is a direct result of climate change. Rise in sea level has threatened the lives of our coastal communities, with more needing relocation now than ever before. Ladies and gentlemen, in Fiji, we are fortunate to have our very own National Disaster Risk Reduction Policy, endorsed and implemented from 2019, which is our blueprint for achieving these targets. I must highlight that the national disaster risk reduction policy was prepared through international cooperation. The Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, provided the DRR expert to develop the NDRR policy with our in-house team, and the Geoscience, Energy and Maritime Division of the Pacific Community, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Pacific Islands Forum, Secretariat and Save the Children Fund provided technical support. The Honorable Prime Minister, when launching the National Disaster Risk Reduction Policy in December 2019, stated that the policy targets are achievable, as they were designed to take into consideration our current resources and capacity. But the need of collaborative efforts of all Fijians at all levels. Thus, the important message is that we must first come together as a nation in prioritizing disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation before progressing to the international arena. It is very important for Fiji as a small island developing nation to realize that the time for creating that behavioral change in our communities and achieving the Sendai target is long overdue, and that only together we can achieve, with all Fijians united in a common cause, in coordination and partnership with our regional and international development partners. On climate change, recently the government has passed the Climate Change Act, which made Fiji the 7th country in the world and the first small island developing state to pass a climate legislation inclusive of net zero emissions goal. The Act legally binds Fiji to its commitment of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. This is a demonstration of Fiji's commitment in the global arena of the serious actions it takes to address climate change issues. The Act provides a legal framework for a carbon neutral and climate resilient Fiji by committing us to 100% sustainable management of Fiji's ocean and climate mitigation and adaptation through nature-based solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, last year we were fortunate to have hosted the National Disaster Awareness Week in Ba, where a total of 7,585 people from the greater Ba province turned up to meet officials and discuss disaster plans. In adhering to the new norm, this year's National Disaster Awareness Week is obviously going to be different from those of previous years. I am delighted that despite the impact of the global biological hazard of COVID-19, we are still able to celebrate this important event. Thanks to modern day technology and innovation, key stakeholders of the Ministry of Rural and Maritime Development and Disaster Management, in particular, the National Disaster Management Office, are convening today and later this week to participate in Fiji's Disaster Awareness Week. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of the preparation to the upcoming cyclone season, the Preparedness Committee and the Mitigation and Prevention Committee have met and have deliberated key issues such as evacuation center SOPs, National Operational Readiness Check, and the formation of the Technical Working Group for Resilient and Infrastructure. The objectives of the National Disaster Awareness Week for 2021, ladies and gentlemen, which the NDAW is mandated by the Natural Disaster Management Act of 1998 to conduct this National Disaster Awareness Week annually. We need the participation of our partners in order to have this convened and carried out effectively. The objectives of the National Disaster Awareness Week for 2021 are to strengthen community awareness and preparedness towards disasters, ensuring no one is left behind. It aims to provide an advocacy platform which highlights best practice and examples of national and international cooperation that have a positive impact on the lives of people who live in disaster-prone parts of Fiji and around the world. The information and advocacy platform is intended to reduce the number of people affected by man-made and natural disasters. It enhances empowerment of children and the vulnerable groups in disaster risk reduction, making them vital participants of the planning process, augmenting efficient working relationships between key stakeholders at all levels, strengthening community-based disaster preparedness and creating the desired behavioral change. The National Disaster Awareness Week for 2021 also aims to create an inclusive disaster awareness platform in the communities through heavy media campaigns, showcasing Fiji's progress towards achieving Target F of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. This year there will also be an opportunity to assess the degree of capacity development and ongoing support being provided by our international development partners, providing the reassurance that Fiji and other small island nations in the region will not be abandoned to the worst impacts of a crisis. The campaigns will further improve, increase, and make more efficient our international coordination and cooperation for disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme for the 2021 National Disaster Awareness Week is Only Together. The theme is aligned to the 2021 International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, which centers on the 7 targets under the Sendai Frameworks for Disaster Risk Reduction. This was launched in 2016 by the UN Secretary General, and the Sendai 7 campaigns to promote each of the 7 targets over 7 years. The target for the year 2021 is Target F, which is on substantially enhancing international cooperation to develop countries through adequate and sustainable support to complement their national actions for implementations of the present framework by 2030. To date, 101 countries have developed national strategies for disaster risk reduction, but many small island developing nations like Fiji will still require an international cooperation and support to implement these strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, we need real action on disaster risk reduction and climate change in the years to come, as extreme weather events will be overwhelming. This past year has so far seen almost 4 million casualties from the worst pandemic of the last 100 years. The world must realize the value of working together in multilateral institutions to ensure disaster risk reduction and vaccine equity now and in the future, and a green risk-informed recovery from disasters and pandemics. Ladies and gentlemen, when we convened the 2020 National Disaster Awareness Week, we did not know that we would be affected by another phase of a deadly variant of the biological hazard of COVID-19. Nevertheless, it is only through our partnership and collaboration between all stakeholders that we, as a nation, have been able to combat this together. We have adapted to the new norm, hence the virtual convening of the National Disaster Awareness Week and the greater use of media and technology to spread the message of preparedness. This week's event is an opportunity for all of us, including national government, local governments, community groups, civil society organizations, the private sector, international organizations, and the UN family, to promote best practices at international, regional, and national levels across all sectors to reduce disaster risk and disaster losses. Ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic has taught us that Fiji, as a developing nation, cannot exist in isolation, and that international support for disaster risk reduction is essential for eradicating poverty, hunger, and reducing economic losses, highlighting the need for much needed investment in multi-hazard early warning systems. Planetary emergencies can only be adequately addressed through impartial and inclusive international cooperation and coordination on disaster risk management. The international cooperation for developing countries through the official development assistance, or ODA, and capacity building is essential to boost disaster resilience in the face of extreme weather events and other natural and man-made hazards. The Ministry, through the NDAW, has been working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the International Cooperation Division of the Ministry of Economy to strengthen the framework developed and to address gaps identified from lessons learned post-tropical cyclone Yasa, Harold, and Yana. Last week I had launched the media campaign on the UN International Day of Disaster Risk Reduction. I had emphasized the importance of the media in the timely and right communication of key simple messages, which also will be life-saving during disasters or emergency operations. As part of this year's National Disaster Awareness Week, I understand that there are webinars organized for the next 3 days on the following topics. One on food security in disaster risk reduction, which will be chaired by the Acting Permanent Secretary for Agriculture. 2 is on the disaster preparedness in COVID-19 context, which will be chaired by PS Housing. And the third webinar will be on the importance of mental health awareness in disaster risk reduction, which will be chaired by PS Women and Poverty Alleviation. Ladies and gentlemen, respective ministries are taking lead roles in ensuring key messages are standardized and that communities are kept informed with development happening across government. I therefore encourage the general public and our partners to join these seminars and share your experiences. Let me assure you all that government is committed to the people of Fiji in continuing to provide services and platforms aimed at preventing loss of lives, reducing damage to properties caused by disasters and other catastrophic events. The resilience of our most vulnerable communities correlates with the timeliness and accuracy of the disaster information received and the urgency of timely responses and information sharing from national level to communities and vice versa. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, TC Winston, although one of the most destructive natural disasters that struck the Southern Hemisphere, it provides us with the window of opportunity to enhance Fiji's resilience to disasters. The government, through the TC Winston Lessons Learned exercise, ensured that appropriate actions were implemented. Fiji is progressing as a nation in terms of its efforts towards disaster risk reduction. According to the World Risk Report of 2020, Fiji is ranked as the 15th highest disaster-prone country in the world, improving from 10th highest in 2018. This is due to the high adaptive capacity implemented by the country post-TC Winston. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the different agencies that have contributed and participated to this week's proceedings, both our local and international partners. Your contribution and participation celebrates and acknowledges that you are an important partner of this journey to equipping our communities with the best possible disaster information and to promote desired behavioral change. Only together we can ensure that we make an impact producing the ultimate behavioral change and mindset nationally and globally. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to celebrate and officially open the National Disaster Awareness Week 2021 and the series of webinars that will happen throughout the week. And I will be launching the video now as part of the celebrations. And thank you. Bahut dhanyabad and God bless Fiji.